The baptism was supposed to be about my nephew. Little Owen, 6 months old, wearing the same christening gown our grandmother had made 60 years ago. My sister Rachel held him with that careful pride of first-time mothers, while her boyfriend Derek stood beside her, playing the doting almost-stepfather role to perfection. I sat in the third row of St. Augustine's church, wedged between my mother's book club friends, watching the ceremony and trying to ignore the whispers that had started the moment I walked in. Is that Rachel's sister? The one who never settled down? I heard she's still trying to find herself, at 32. After the ceremony, we filed into the church reception hall where my parents had arranged an elaborate brunch for 44 guests. White tablecloths, champagne towers, a dessert table that looked like it belonged at a wedding. No expense spared for Rachel's first child. I'd offered to contribute. My mother had laughed and said, "Oh honey, save your money. We know you're struggling." I wasn't struggling. I had $847,000 in my investment portfolio and owned my condo outright. But I'd stopped correcting them years ago. Derek kept looking at me during the reception. Not in a creepy way, more like he was trying to place me. His friend James, who'd come as his plus one, noticed too and leaned over to whisper something. Derek shook his head, frowning. Then my father stood up to make a toast. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate Owen's baptism," Dad began, his voice carrying across the hall. "As many of you know, Rachel has always been our shining star. Graduated top of her class, married young to a wonderful man, God rest his soul, and now she's built a beautiful life as a single mother with Derek by her side." Rachel beamed. Derek squeezed her hand. "We're so proud of how responsible she's been," Dad continued. "How she's always made smart decisions, always thought about her future. Unlike some people," he glanced in my direction and a few guests followed his gaze, "Rachel has never been impulsive or irresponsible." My mother nodded along enthusiastically. "Our youngest daughter is the successful one. She's the one who made something of herself." I took a long sip of champagne and said nothing. But Derek was staring at me now, his expression shifting from confusion to recognition to something like shock. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then showed the screen to James. James's eyes went wide. He said something I couldn't hear. Derek typed something else, his thumbs moving frantically. 15 minutes passed. The servers brought out the main course. Conversations buzzed around me. About Owen, about Rachel's new house, about Derek's promotion at the law firm. I pushed salmon around my plate and counted the minutes until I could politely leave. Then James pulled out his own phone, searched for something and showed it to Derek. Derek's face went completely white. He stood up so abruptly his chair scraped against the floor. The nearby conversations stopped. "Excuse me," Derek said, his voice strange. "I need to ask something." He walked directly to me, James trailing behind him, both of them staring at me like I'd grown a second head. "Are you Catherine Morgan?" Derek asked. Every conversation in the room died. I set down my fork. "Yes. The Catherine Morgan who won the Pulitzer Prize for Investigative Journalism in 2019? Yes." "Oh my God." James was pulling up something on his phone. "I read your book in college. The Silent System. It's about corruption in the foster care system. It changed my entire perspective on social work. I wrote my thesis on it." Derek was still staring at me. "You're the journalist who exposed the child trafficking ring in Nevada. Your investigation led to 47 arrests and the complete reformation of the state's child protective services." 49 arrests actually, I corrected quietly. "They got 2 more last year based on evidence I'd gathered." The room had gone completely silent. 44 people frozen mid-bite, mid-sip, mid-conversation. Rachel's face had drained of color. "Kate, what is he talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that your sister is one of the most respected investigative journalists in the country," Derek said, his voice rising. "She's won a Pulitzer, 2 Peabody Awards and the George Polk Award. She's been featured on 60 Minutes, NPR and CNN. Her work has literally changed federal legislation." My mother's champagne glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. No one moved to clean it up. "That can't be right," Dad said weakly. "Kate works freelance. She barely makes ends meet." "I do work freelance," I confirmed. "I left the Washington Post 3 years ago to do independent investigations. My last advance was $300,000 for a book about corporate whistleblowers. It comes out next month." Derek was looking at Rachel now, his expression shifting from shock to something harder. You told me your sister couldn't hold down a job. You said she was irresponsible and flaky. You said your parents had to help support her. I thought, Rachel started, but Derek cut her off. You thought what? You thought the woman who's been nominated for a National Book Award was struggling? You thought the journalist who testified before Congress was irresponsible. She never told us. Rachel's voice cracked. She never said anything about any of this. I tried, I said quietly. All eyes turned to me. I tried to tell you when I won the Pulitzer. Mom said it was nice but asked if it paid well. I tried to tell you when 60 Minutes did a feature on my Nevada investigation. Dad said he didn't watch that liberal media garbage. I tried to tell you when I bought my condo. You assumed I'd gone into debt. The silence was suffocating. James was scrolling through his phone. Holy shit. She's been invited to speak at Harvard, Yale, Columbia. She did a TED Talk that has 8 million views. She's on the advisory board for the Innocence Project. Kate. My mother's voice was tiny. Is this all true? Which part? The part where I've spent the last 10 years building a career I'm proud of? The part where I've helped put human traffickers in prison? Or the part where none of you bothered to ask what I actually do? My father's face had turned red. You should have told us. I did tell you. Repeatedly. You just didn't listen. I stood up, my napkin falling to the floor. Do you know what it's like to win the highest honor in your profession and have your own parents dismiss it? To have your work featured nationally and have your family change the subject? We didn't know it was such a big deal, Mom whispered. You didn't care that it was a big deal, I corrected. Because I didn't do it the way you wanted. I didn't get married young like Rachel. I didn't have kids. I didn't work a 9-to-5 job you could explain to your friends. So you decided I was the irresponsible one. The failure. The daughter who needed to be pitied. Derek was shaking his head, looking at Rachel with an expression I couldn't quite read. Do you have any idea how many times you complained about your sister to me? How you said she was wasting her life? How you said your parents worried about her constantly? I didn't know. Rachel sobbed. She never talks about her work. Because you never asked, I said. In 10 years, Rachel, you've asked me about my work exactly twice. Once when I first started freelancing and once when you needed me to write a recommendation letter for your friend. That's it. You never asked what stories I was working on. You never asked where I was traveling. You never asked anything because you'd already decided I wasn't worth asking about. My father stood up, his chair screeching. Now wait just a minute. We're your family. We love you. You love the version of me that makes you feel better about yourselves, I shot back. The struggling artist daughter who makes Rachel look like the successful one by comparison. The irresponsible sister who proves how responsible Rachel is. You needed me to be the failure so Rachel could be the star. That's not true, Mom said, tears streaming down her face. Isn't it? When was the last time you bragged about me to your friends? When was the last time you asked me to explain my work at a family gathering? When was the last time you treated my career with the same respect you treat Rachel's job at a marketing firm? Rachel flinched. I'm not saying Rachel's job isn't important, I continued. But I am saying that you've spent years building her up while tearing me down, and you did it so consistently that you actually convinced yourselves it was true. Derek pulled out his phone again, scrolled through something, then showed it to Rachel. This is your sister's Wikipedia page. It's longer than most senators. She's interviewed presidents. She's broken stories that changed laws. And you told me she was a flake who couldn't commit to anything. Rachel was crying openly now, mascara running down her face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Kate. I thought. You thought what Mom and Dad told you to think, I said softly. Just like you always have. I grabbed my purse and coat. The room was still frozen, 44 guests witnessing a family implosion at a baptism reception. Where are you going? Dad demanded. Back to my irresponsible life, I said. I have a meeting with my publisher on Monday, an interview with NPR on Wednesday, and a flight to Chicago on Friday to testify as an expert witness in a federal corruption case. But don't worry, I'm sure you'll find a way to dismiss all of that too. Catherine, please. Mom reached for me, but I stepped back. I've spent a decade trying to earn your respect, trying to make you proud, trying to prove I wasn't the failure you'd decided I was. But I'm done. I'm done shrinking myself to fit your narrative. I'm done apologizing for being successful in a way you don't understand. Derek was still holding his phone, staring at the screen. Jesus Christ. She was shortlisted for the Nobel Peace Prize last year for her work on international human rights violations. What? Rachel whispered. I didn't win, I said. But yes, I was nominated. My mother sat down heavily, looking like she might faint. My father's mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out. For what it's worth, I said to Rachel, I am happy for you. Owen is beautiful. Derek seems like a good man. I hope you build a wonderful life together. I just wish you'd wanted the same for me. I turned to Derek. Your firm does pro bono work, right? Corporate law. He nodded, still looking stunned. I'm working on a story about pharmaceutical companies suppressing clinical trial data. If you want to contribute legal expertise, call me. My contact information is on my website. Then I looked at the room full of guests, all of them staring at me like I was a stranger. Congratulations on Owen's baptism, I said. I hope he grows up in a family that celebrates his achievements, whatever form they take. The autumn air was cold as I stepped outside. My phone buzzed. My editor, probably with notes on the draft I'd sent yesterday. I had a deadline on Friday. An interview to prep for. A case file to review. I had a life full of purpose and meaning in work that mattered. And I'd built it entirely without their approval. Behind me, I could hear the muffled sounds of crying, arguing, 44 people probably gossiping about what they'd just witnessed. I didn't look back. I got in my car and drove back to the city, back to my condo with its wall of journalism awards and shelves full of research files, back to the life my family had never bothered to see. And for the first time in years, I felt the weight of their judgment finally lift from my shoulders. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's realizing you never needed them to be proud of you in the first place.